Hello and welcome to the 115th episode of Growing Up Geek, the weekly podcast for geek entertainment and nostalgia. My name is Brad, and I am joined as always by my brother Rob.
Pignui Mugalaf Cthulhu Relief Metallic Fanen, good brother.
How's it going, man?
It's going good.
I understand you've been checking my toots.
Been checking your tweets.
Before we recorded this, you were saying that your Twitter client was tweet-free?
Tweet-free.
Is this what you use on your Palm? Is this the best Twitter app on Palm?
So far, yeah. I think Tweed was what I was using before.
Yeah.
Its only downfall is it has like these background processes that kind of slow things down, even when the application is closed.
I just think it's funny that Twitter clients have multiplied by like the billions.
Yeah.
So there's no more good names. Like mine right now is called Toiter, and it's spelled, well, that's how I say it. It's spelled Touiteur. It's the worst.
Yeah, I mean, mine was really fully featured. I like that it has like what the trend integration, which tells you what is a Justin Bieber, you know?
Right. Yeah, I know you did a Justin Bieber drop the other day, and I'm like, what the heck is that? It's sort of like this Merton video that's been going around, this chat roulette thing, and I'm like the last man on earth to see it. Yeah. But you were like, yeah, the trending topics, filled you in.
Yeah, you just see what kind of bubbles up on the Twitter sphere.
But so, hey, let's go ahead and get into the show proper.
Sure.
If there was a security camera recording your geeky activities this week, what would be the highlight?
Probably the highlight, the thing I found myself getting into just out of the blue, because of some stuff on Netflix and then on YouTube. Mm-hmm. I got into the Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah, the book, right?
Yeah. The H.P. Lovecraft. It's actually kind of a short story. Like, he didn't write very long stuff.
Right.
And that's, what I started off our show with, was the kind of chant to
Cthulhu? How do you like to say that? Because I've heard Cthulhu.
I say Cthulhu.
I like it.
But I was listening to an audiobook, so that's where I tried to get these pronunciations from.
Okay.
But it's interesting. Like, for example, there's a movie that was posted on Netflix which first turned me on to this, because I'd heard of the video game a long time ago. It was on Xbox, and I was like, what the heck is this Cthulhu thing? And then I thought it was
called Call of Cthulhu, or
Call of Cthulhu.
Right. And
the movie, I guess cleverly or kind of interestingly enough, is a brand new silent film.
Yeah.
Yeah, like people will talk and then you'll see the text appear. And I think this is in part to kind of like pay homage to the impronounceable manner of this creature and the language surrounding him.
He's like a world eater, essentially, right? With like a squid face.
I don't know about the world eaterness, but yeah, he has a cuttlefish head.
Nice.
Which is, much more pleasant sounding than squid face.
Well, like, Lovecraft is one of those things that's like a style. Like, people say, like, Lovecraftian.
I believe it. Because that was the thing that all of a sudden I was like, oh man, this is like really well written. Like, I'm actually a little baffled right now that there hasn't been any kind of push to make like a Hollywood movie of it.
Right.
Because what I didn't realize is that it kind of has this Pulp Fiction-y-esque quality to it. I mean, we're talking, this guy predates everybody. Like, Stephen King is like, oh, I grew up reading H.P. Lovecraft and stuff like that.
Right.
And
is he really good with like vivid descriptions of like horrifying thing? Okay. That's what I always hear.
But also, he's good at creating kind of like shocking revelations. Particularly in this book, because it's this guy who's piecing together all of these separate events that took place over this month. Mm-hmm. And like, at first it just seems like crazy, like cults or whatever, people acting weird, but then the rabbit hole goes deeper. And I love that idea. I love that moment in a story whenever the perceptions of what's going on is kind of flipped.
Right.
And so I really thought it was cool. If anything, I guess, is keeping this from being made into a serious movie, it is this thing that Lovecraft was trying to create, which was the idea of like the inconceivable horror.
Right.
Which is, you
can't see it like on a screen.
You can't pronounce this name. You can't say these words really.
Right.
And then the climax has this sort of madness quality to it where things are just not as they seem at all.
Right.
and kind of trying to pull that off in like a visual way, in an audible way.
Yeah. Maybe there's just too much respect. Funny idea, but
I don't know.
For the source material, that it is a book, and that books can do certain things that films can't, and that might be one of them. Like your mind perceived whatever it was.
Yeah, on Twitter I observed there seems to be a correlation, and I'm not sure, between the Reapers in Mass Effect and Cthulhu, especially like the squid shape and the old ancientness legend and things like that.
Yeah.
People who've checked out either will probably start making the connection. But that's what I've been into this week.
Well, no, that's cool. I just real quick, is that readable, I guess? Is Lovecraft isn't he like from the 1800s?
Well, first of all, like I said, I listened to the audiobook.
Oh, right.
The audiobook was available on YouTube.
Oh, nice.
And it is. It's relatable. It's cool. I found myself like really thinking about like the concepts of it. Sweet. And just being like, man, that wouldn't be interesting to see something like that.
Cool.
I don't know, but yeah, it's still cool. I would say for anybody who likes reading, which we've been doing
listening
this
to
week.
YouTube audio.
Exactly, or listening to YouTube audio.
Yeah, and see, my week consisted of a lot of television, so I was about to be embarrassed as you described your literary journeys, and then I said, and I watched a TV,
Yeah.
I watched a picture box.
It fed me information as I lay back.
Yeah, but knowing that you consumed this through YouTube kind of makes it easier for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my week, the biggest thing I can say is Sunday night has gotten really awesome for television.
Oh, really?
And you probably already know this if you're following Breaking Bad, which is the first awesomeness of Sunday night. The third season premiered, and I cannot impress upon people enough how good this show is and how good it continues to be. It's almost like other shows try to make life boring. They boil it down to kind of things that we see all the time. Constantly seeing cops, constantly seeing hospitals and lawyers. It's like, yes, I get it. People do that in the real world, but real life is full of so many interesting, decisions and actions. Like Robert McKee would be smiling, at this show because like motivations of what people do. For those who don't know, Breaking Bad, about the high school teacher who gets lung cancer and decides to sell crystal meth. Interesting premise, right? But it's what his decisions are and what the day-to-day kind of emotions of all the people around him are that just make it such a good show. And the third season started off with actually kind of some cliche stuff, which almost breaks what I'm saying. However, after the cliches happened, there was a lot of, just great writing. And so Breaking Bad is a reason to be excited about Sunday. Also, the follow-up to Planet Earth premiered this past Sunday, which is called Life. For those that haven't seen it, I actually haven't seen it yet. Did you get a chance to?
I don't have cable.
Right, that's right. Yeah, you're gonna keep saying that until I remember.
Don't have cable. I'm just gonna have that soundboard loaded up to play.
Yeah. But Life is supposedly has been in production longer than Planet Earth, and if you don't know that this stuff is real, people are saying you'll swear it's CG. Like some of the animals and just the insane, life that they find in this documentary. The one thing I saw was like a frog bouncing down a hill to get away from a predator, like in a ball form. And it's like, who knew? I love Planet Earth, and Planet Earth is showing its age at this point, so it'd be kind of nice to get a brand new Blu-ray, show off disc. And I may just have to wait for that.
Sure.
But
I have a question for you, by the way.
Yeah.
Kind of non sequitur here, but have you at all, this should be short because there's not much information, heard yet about the Nintendo 3DS?
Oh, yeah. Just to finish up.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean
no, sorry. The last thing is that Tim and Eric is also on Sunday night.
Oh, so Sunday nights really are the best thing ever for you.
Yeah, sorry. But no, back to your 3DS comment. Yeah, I have heard about it. There are literally 3 facts about the Nintendo 3DS.
Yeah.
One, it's called the Nintendo 3DS, but it won't be, apparently,
That's
for long.
Yeah, the code name for it.
Yeah. 2 is that it displays 3D without 3D glasses. All right.
Auto stereoscopic. Nice.
Right, yes. I think that's how some people die. Yeah, and Jeff Gerstmann posted, and I think it's appropriate, that it reminded him of the Sega 3D arcade game.
With the cowboy.
And yeah, that's all I can think of. I mean, I'm sure technology has improved since then, but then the last fact is that
it's backwards compatible with the DS and DSi?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and so that's what we know. and I'm kind of like up for like a good round of speculation or something, because I always enjoy this, but there are other sources feeding into this now. First of all, 3D without 3D glasses. There's definitely a precedent for that. I mean, we were at like the CN Tower way back when, and we saw those auto stereoscopic things where you sit at a certain angle and you can see it 3D. And I think a portable system is the best way to do this, because first of all, it's a small screen. You don't have to have that much of an investment. And the second thing is you can almost always count on them being at a certain angle. Now, that being said, there is this other cool thing where they've showed with the DSi, you can have the camera do face tracking. And there are games out already now that will adjust the angle of the game depending on where your face is. So now, like, it can place 3D objects even more accurately. That all sounds cool. My thing is it still going to be a flip open, or are they finally going to make this thing one big screen?
Yeah, you posted about how you thought this was the first Nintendo product in a while to not seem stupid.
Well, no.
You know?
I actually meant that as I'm worried about this, because it seems like Nintendo has turned every dumb idea I've thought they had into success. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. The dumbest name console in history is going to also be the most successful.
And the DS, I remember we were like, totally PlayStation Portal is going to kick this thing's butt.
Right. Two screens, just combine those suckers and form one 16:9 screen.
Like, what the heck? Like, and then usually, like, their announcements are just like, this like, oh, we're going to be checking your pulse with this little device. And I'm like, that's crazy, But Nintendo seems to make it work and make that successful. But when it's just like, okay, it's gonna be a 3D screen in this era of 3D stuff.
Right.
I just feel like it's too predictable. It makes too much sense, and now I'm worried, like, oh my goodness, Nintendo's going to fail at this one.
Yeah, and there's got to be something, like, behind this idea to announce this before the release of the XL?
Yeah, the XL, the DSi XL.
Yeah, before that's even out the door, we're hearing about the next system. So
because I guess they're thinking in terms of like Japan. They're like, well, that's out in Japan. It's not out yet here. And
that's true.
They've pulled the same thing with the Game Boy Advanced Micro.
Yeah, I think strike while the iron's hot. 3D is hot right now, especially because of Avatar selling a bajillion. I'm sure that things that have no connection to 3D whatsoever will be in 3D. Like, businesses will start pouring money into 3D just because of Avatar.
They have already. I mean, I was listening today about how, like, Clash of the Titans is going to be in 3D now.
Sure.
And it wasn't originally even filmed in 3D.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Like, Avatar was successful, and then they're like, oh, man. So, like, they took 8 weeks, just 8 weeks to slap this thing into 3D. It's like...
You hear that, audiences? Get ready for that quality fest.
Yeah.
Be sure to line up for the 8-week cobbled-together 3D of Clash of the Titans.
I know.
It's like, Avatar was like 10 years of painstaking, like, technology building, and then shot in 3D. It's the same with The Hobbit. Guillermo del Toro has been asked, which I assume is another way of saying forced, by the studio to make The Hobbit in 3D, although it was not shot or intended, to be in 3D.
Yeah.
3D, whatever. But Nintendo's getting on the bandwagon, so.
And I think they're doing the right thing, because it's
okay.
It's an all-in-one. It's a 3D screen and game system, so you don't have to worry about anything compatibility-wise. It's all just one package. And
yeah. Hey, since you interrupted my news story with that, can
Go ahead.
I interrupt your interruption
Yes.
to say real quick, before we move to our main topic, that Chris Evans has been cast as Captain America.
What?
In the upcoming quintology of Captain America movies,
What?
or however they'll be. Chris Evans is Johnny Flame in the Fantastic Four movie. He was also in the movie Sunshine, if you saw that. I think you did.
I did.
Because we recorded a show about it.
Historical evidence.
He's signed on for at least 3 Captain America movies, starting with next July's The First Avenger: Captain America. And I'm excited about this. Hugo Weaving will be playing the Red Skull in that, which I think is kind of cool. So anyway, Chris Evans. There was a lot of, I'm not a big Captain America reader, although I did read The Ultimate Avengers, and I thought that was a great take on Captain America that I would love to see in this movie. Basically they show him in the 40s, rushing like Normandy, in like a full like military / Captain America uniform. Like it made sense of the suit, it was very military. And then, he gets sort of like lost and frozen in ice and then thawed out in modern times, and he has all of the, classic 40s mentality in modern era. I think that would be the perfect story. But regardless of what they do, this is, to get ready for the Avengers movie, which will be coming out in 2012, in which Iron Man will be played by Robert Downey Jr., and the Hulk will be played by Edward Norton, and the new guy, Chris Hemsworth, is going to play Thor, because there's going to be a Thor film. So there's all this interconnectivity going on. Yeah,
wow.
There's all these new movies coming out, and they're circling around the Avengers.
I don't even know that it's going to make sense to do Captain America these days. Like,
yeah,
I don't think people are so nationalistic anymore to be like, yeah, America versus Russia. Like,
no, he was punching Adolf Hitler in the face, like on the front of these comics back then, and it's such a different time. Like you said, yeah,
I really, I don't see that people are going to be really rallying behind
an American hero.
Exactly, like with America, and then like I'm gonna punch you in the face and leave an American flag scar on you.
I think they need to tap into that to make this work. Like I said, if they pull off this Ultimate Avengers storyline where he's from a different time, a time with hardcore American values, and then he's transported into now where people just don't give a crap. And he's able to sort of like, almost like Superman, come back and sort of reclaim some of that patriotism. That could be great. I mean, that's just me throwing that out there. But, I mean, if they work it around the current climate, I definitely don't want to see Captain America in Iraq,
yeah.
Unless it makes sense.
Well, that worked for Iron Man. But
that's true. Yeah, so speaking of all that comic book stuff, why don't we move on to our main topic, which this week is going to be a comic book. We read All-Star Superman. Sorry, for a second there I forgot what we read. And man, it's been a while since we read a true, spandex and capes superhero story.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as popular or not as trendy these days, I guess, to say. I mean, certainly it sells.
Yeah, and I don't know if we have to apologize to the audience, but we've read a lot of horror comics and sort of things like Chew, that are sort of off the beaten path.
Like progressive ideas and things like that.
Sure, yeah, the modern comic or whatever, but it's good to get back into a classic, superhero story, and this one I think is appropriate because this is part of the All-Star line that DC launched in 2005, beginning with All-Star Batman. And basically the idea here was to allow great creators to tell a story but be sort of unhindered by the DC continuity, or canon. It didn't have to fit into that. And that's really good for us because it's safe to say, don't follow Superman, not the comic version anyway. Although I love, the Bryan Singer movie and everything. But I think Grant Morrison, who is the writer here, said he wanted it to be a readable story, universally readable. And so, as a non-Superman reader, what did you think of All-Star Superman?
I thought it was bonkers.
Yeah, good word for it. Why don't you set up the premise if you can? The overall.
Like, I'm even worried to do that because, well, here's what I could say if I was recommending it to somebody.
Yeah.
Imagine all the things that you've ever wanted Superman to do. Like,
right.
The story has always been kind of building towards, but never happens because it's a procedural storyline.
Yeah.
What if somebody just said, you know what? Screw it. It's happening, and it's happening now.
Right.
That's what is going on here. It's really like it. To me, almost seems a lot like the Death of Superman series.
I think it's probably necessary to give the listener a little just thin storyline here. Superman is confronted with the fact that he is dying. Lex Luthor has finally succeeded and found a way to kill the unkillable, Man of Steel, basically. And
I would have placed that as a spoiler, but I guess it does happen relatively early.
It's the setup of the book. It's the first couple pages, and it frames the storyline. Superman dealing with that. But that sounds serious, and I was expecting a serious book. But like you said, I think bonkers is the best word for it. From the get-go, this book is like silly, adventurous fun.
Yeah. It sets up this promise of like there will be 12 amazing, mind-blowing feats that you are going to witness.
Right. Yeah, they talk about this legend of Superman that he wasn't even aware of from the future. And I mean, the future figures into this, and I think I just have to list some of the things that we see in this book. Okay, out of context, hopefully these won't be spoilers, but Superman's dog is in this book.
Yeah.
Indestructible flower.
Yep.
Black kryptonite.
Yep.
A chronovore.
Yep.
The year 853,000.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's crazy.
It really is. And I think it's really cool how the writer here, Grant Morrison, is just moving systematically almost through the Superman universe, like through characters we know and stuff, and having an intimate storyline. Superman and Lois Lane obviously taking care of, and then there's Jimmy, and then beyond that, Superdog appears, and you're like, wow, he's really like just covering all of the bases. Like, this character, well, here's what's going to happen in this situation. Like it's
each issue is like almost another, like almost goodbye or something to another character. A way to sort of have as much fun with them as you can before this series is over.
Yeah, it's like Superman's checking off his bucket list.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually, I felt, was kind of a weakness of this book, because I feel like Grant Morrison was given a big playground to play in, and he just said, like you said, screw it, I'm just going to show you all the amazing things I can think of. But as a result, it moves a wee bit fast, and I think it feels a wee bit detached.
I can see that, especially like there was an event in I think the second story that seemed like, oh man, this is going to be ominous and huge. And it's like it was like 1 page long.
Yeah, he moves very quickly through this, and so you mentioned you get intimate moments. I felt more like I had just sort of a little snapshot of each thing that was happening. So if the person listening to this is, I don't know, you may clap your hands like a schoolgirl, or you may find that the ideas don't have enough time to draw you in. I'm not quite sure.
Well, I guess you could give the ideas more time, but by then I don't think it would read like a Superman comic would. Mm-hmm. Like I think that's something we come to expect. The pacing of The Walking Dead or Watchmen, which really like savors its time and takes moments to drop hints about future occurrences. This is just moving from thing to thing, and it's a very exciting, kind of like an ADD centered book. Like a kid could pick this up and be just like, oh man, like, gathered around the lunch table with his friends at school, like, look at this next thing that happens, and then tracing the outlines and really getting into every little detail and rereading it and being like, oh, I never noticed that before. Like, I think it's appropriate for a Superman comic.
I'll tell you, I did like the way that Morrison portrayed Clark Kent as just sort of this big oafish, clumsy, tripping guy. Because people always make the joke, oh, if he just has glasses on, it's obvious.
Yeah.
But, he really shows here that it's more than the glasses. It's the fact that a man who's like 300 pounds, 7 feet tall or whatever, who's not coordinated, is like an oaf.
Yeah.
Like, it's a scary thing at that point, because he's like tripping and being like, whoa, whoa, but he's like really big, And people are like, geez, Kent, like, watch where you're going. And so they're probably just, there's no way that people can connect him with that, suave flying guy. I liked that. I also liked this Lex Luthor.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I mean, he...
physically fit and like ultra intelligent.
And you can really, that's the other thing is I think they do a good job of getting into the minds of the other characters in the Superman universe. Yeah. And why is he this way? Why is he evil? It's like at a certain point you're just like, nobody's actually this sinister, and yet he is, and he gives his reason, and it's almost this really compelling sort of the end of Dante's Inferno type thing where
imagine someone constantly gets in your way, with and from his perspective plans to rule the world, and is able to with his intellect, and yet here's this person that's constantly getting into their way. It almost made me feel, at that point you'd be like, and the book sets up also that Lex is getting older. Yep. Superman is not. So at some point he has to succeed and kill Superman, or it's never going to be, it's never going to be finished. Mm-hmm. He'll never have a chance to rule the world.
Yeah.
And I thought that was pretty cool. Although that, that may be some of the most serious stuff in this whacked out book.
Right. It's almost irreverent in the way that it handles like stuff. Just let's get this out of the way. Superman's going to die. It's like
I think Superman at one point calls someone a moron.
Mm-hmm. And I agree with you about the Clark Kent thing too, and it kind of reminded me of I think was it Kill Bill Volume 2 or something, where they discuss like Clark Kent is this act but it's Superman's judgment on mankind, because that's how like Superman thinks people are.
Oh,
exactly. Like, oh, they're clumsy and they always need help with everything, and they can't see without their glasses on. And I was just always kind of amused the whole time to be like this acting thing that Superman is doing, and doing well enough to fool Lex Luthor in his face, which is brilliant.
Sure.
I mean, I know it's just a comic book, but I'm like sitting there just like believing the whole thing, just eating it up, you know?
Yeah. There's a lot of cool ideas here. I think it's up to the reader whether or not this amount of cool ideas will draw them in, or if they'll just sort of be like, you know, and for me it was enjoyable, but I was almost more kicking back and enjoying Grant Morrison's mind. You know what I mean? Like weird Superman world terminology is used in this book.
Yeah.
You know, and I just kind of sucked all that in. But like I said, it was all from a distance for me.
Definitely. And then we're talking so much about Grant Morrison, we got to talk about Frank Quitely.
Yeah.
The artist.
Sure, sorry.
I think his art is part what adds to the sort of wholesomeness of the book. You know, like,
I like the cover where Superman is just sort of sitting on a cloud, and they mention that specifically they wanted to portray how would Superman sit, you know? He wouldn't just stand there with his chest puffed out like he always is. He would just kind of recline on a cloud, you know, or whatever he would do, you know? And they definitely focus on Superman's leisure time in this, which is like Cthulhu, you know? that's like looking into the abyss, because
I gotta feed the infinite madness here. Hold on a second.
Right. No, I mean, a man who is able to like lift the weight of 1,000 suns in one hand, you know, the stuff he's gonna do to entertain himself, pretty crazy. Pretty crazy. And they show some of that, and I did enjoy a peek into that. But anyway, so yeah, I would recommend All-Star Superman. It was touted to me as like the book of the year. I don't think it lives up to that. But if you just go in expecting a bonkers Superman story, I think you'll be pleased.
Definitely. It reads as a good Superman story, and I think you don't need to know everything about Superman. It deals with stuff that's general knowledge, and even the deeper knowledge stuff, ties it all together in a good package. I agree it's not the comic of the year. There's a lot more interesting, like I said, progressive stuff going on out there. But this, if anything, is kind of like that fun little nugget that, you know, it's the popcorn movie, you know, that really just, it's enjoyable. It's not going to make you think too hard. It's just, bam, there's your fun. You know, it is completely...
It's a palate cleanser.
It's a nice palate cleanser after you read Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, or Chew, where someone's gnawing on human flesh.
Oh,
and
man.
That's like, you know, you do need comics like this still.
Yeah.
I really do believe that. You still do need, I think, heroes that are like this that you can look up to and that aren't like, my God, the horror.
And this is maybe one of the first that we can recommend to, like, a kid, you know?
You may be right about that. Yeah. So moving on, before we close out our show, we always like to get a little nostalgic and reminisce about growing up geek, of course. And, you know, I've talked before on the show about the year that I took off after high school to decide what I'm doing with my life.
How's that going for you?
Yeah, it extended into an entire lifetime, apparently. Yeah. No, during that year, I watched a lot of bad late-night television. And we've mentioned many times on this show Cleopatra 2525. That show, if I mention that, you cannot help but have the rest of that conversation, which is the other shows in that action pack hour. Yeah. So
Kevin Sorbo and Kevin Sorbo
are. Well, let's start there. So
Andromeda.
Hercules.
Pulled from the flushings of...
Well, where do you want to start? Hercules or Andromeda? I mean, go ahead.
Kevin Sorbo, first of all, appears in Hercules as the Herc.
Yes. Who said that he was... He once in an interview said, believe it or not, I was nerdy in high school. And I'm thinking, I think you're nerdy now. Like, sorry, Kevin Sorbo, but like I don't understand. I never understood how that was like the choice. I mean,
let's be honest. First of all, this was like this big 90s thing where they were going to have sassy mythology, you know, it's
a new genre.
Exactly. Well, I guess, you know, the
Xena.
beginnings were in... Well, Xena came after Hercules.
Oh, did it? Okay.
Yeah, it did. And but I guess the layings began with Deathstalker, obviously.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Well, the 80s had this idea of like
oily
Dungeons
hero.
and Dragons. It's old in its content, but modern in its attitude.
Furry loincloths.
Furry loincloths.
Plus smarm. I mean, almost every show on Action Pack had smarm.
And one-liners.
Do you remember? Yeah, Jack of All Trades, starring Bruce Campbell.
Yeah.
That's one I always think of, and he was totally like the ho, stand back, me ladies. You know.
What was the one with Pete's Piece?
Buckaroo. No. Yeah. I want to say Buckaroo Banzai. That was on Fox. Yeah, that was another Bruce Campbell show.
Yeah.
Whatever the heck that was called. Not Buckaroo Banzai, but it was the adventures of somebody like that, like a cowboy.
Right. Like
Tennessee. You touch Pete's
somebody.
piece. You just something you don't want to do with Pete.
No. He took my piece.
But getting back to the Action Pack, this is all on the United. Not on UPN, but it's on the Universal, I guess, through like NBC, whatever it is.
Well, UPN definitely just ended up gobbling them all up. Like,
exactly.
If you want to talk about like what this is, if you still aren't sure, we're talking about UPN.
Basically, a Relic Hunter.
Oh,
which may as well have been called Cave Groper. I mean, it's like, can you come up with a more obvious like analogy for Tomb Raider?
Raider of Tombs,
starring Tia Carrere as a Tomb Raider and her nerdy sidekick.
Yeah. X Factor.
I don't even remember that one.
It was either there was one that was a ripoff of the X Files, and then there was another one which was a ripoff of X-Men.
Gosh, there was some sort of like paranormal files or something.
Exactly.
But then,
oh god.
Okay, but so you said Andromeda. You mentioned, which was the flushings of Roddenberry.
Yes, Gene Roddenberry's
literal Roddenberries that had been flushed. His wife discovered these in their attic, I guess.
I suppose whatever the story was, like it shouldn't have been made, but they were just like, oh yeah.
Let's be clear. Material that Gene Roddenberry found ill fit to publish, you know?
Mm-hmm.
That's what this was. I know he's a god of sci-fi and everything, but it's like
yeah, even they have
he didn't
edits,
put this out for a reason.
Like,
yeah, he had limits.
Right, you gotta cut some stuff out. There's rewrites and stuff like that. It's like, oh man, I don't want to read the first draft of the 1960s Star Trek.
Oh geez, yeah. If you've ever read the original draft of Star Wars with like Commander Skywalker with his metal hand, you know, what? Geez, that's not far off. Sorry, I made it sound ridiculous, but it's basically in the movie still. That there was a lot of interesting stuff that probably is better off left in the flusher.
There was a Sinbad show.
Gosh.
And I remember
no,
like,
there totally was. I thought you meant the comedian.
He was posing in Playgirl, and it was like, don't show any of my naughty bits.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, on Sinbad, like the voyages of Sinbad?
This was the for like E! Entertainment or something. They were reporting on this, like,
the guy, the actual actor.
He was a heartthrob. Yeah, I mean, like that whole scene was just so degenerate.
It was like inbreeding or something where it just kept Xena spawned.
And what the heck? Yeah, Xena was just this bizarre kind of idea of like, all right, we've messed around with Greek mythology enough in Hercules that now we can just start inventing our own stuff.
And like the fans were always like, woohoo, there's two of them, two ladies. And I think the show eventually was like, all right.
Yeah, I think it did. Well, come on. The whole point of those entire shows was for ratings.
Yeah.
Like, it's not even to tell a good story.
It's like the Star Trek Voyager episode involving dinosaurs because the Lost World was out.
Oh, boy. Yeah, that same sort of like, people will accidentally watch this.
Yeah, grandmothers
maybe hopefully accidentally watch a commercial that we play during it.
I know, it was that bad. But no, when I mentioned the lowest of the low, there was still VIP.
Oh yeah, with like the crosshair.
Yep, with the crosshair logo and Pam Anderson as like a secret spy.
Oh.
Yep, with a group of lady spies.
All you have to say.
Well, then again, at the end of the day, I did watch these things, so I guess I'm not fully without guilt, without sin. You know, I have
just like, well, the TV is on.
The TV was on, and you're going through this stuff kind of like, are they tapping into something here like that really is enjoyable? I don't know. It was almost always fantasy or sci-fi, so it was like nerd friendly.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it was so god awful.
Television tailored for the person who has skipped a year and is up at 4 a.m.
Yep. Drinking
whatever.
deep from the bottle on a Friday night. Yeah. Yeah. Hanging out with my chin strap.
Oh man.
But so that is some memories. Anything else before we flush this down the flusher?
Well, like, was like Sequest among that, or was that a little higher? Like, and then I'm like, Earth 2.
How dare you, sir?
Was Earth 2 at all part of that?
No, how dare you?
I'll tell you what wasn't, and that I wish I could bring back was Space Above and Beyond.
Yeah, that was good. I know Earth 2 is actually on Instant Stream if you want to relive some of that. There's some quality to be had there. Yeah, Sequest and this is a whole other episode, but Sequest and Earth 2 and Space Above and Beyond were all sort of in the same time period, I think, of like decent sci-fi that was on like prime time.
Yeah, I guess because of Star Trek, like people were willing to take risks with science fiction.
Right, exactly.
And that kind of fell away, and now it's coming back thanks to Lost. And unfortunately, we have V.
By the way, I heard that Lost was inspired by Myst the other day, and I was like, ooh.
I believe it.
I mean,
you know what? If there's going to be another Lost video game and they don't want to suck, it should be like Myst.
I've actually heard that Lost video game.
It should be 100 years after the fact and somebody like looking around.
Yes, and many portals
not finding anything
being open. Yeah. But so that is our nostalgia for this week. Thank you for listening. If you would like to write in and share some of your nostalgic memories, we'd love that. And you can do so at our email address, which is mail@growing-up-geek.com. You can also follow us throughout the week on Twitter. Read our toots at twitter.com/GUGBrad or GUGRob. And that's going to do it. Once again, my name is Brad.
Yay!
And that is Rob.
That was Xena.
We will see you next week.
I'm going to throw my chakram at you.
Oh, no, please, not the chakram.
End
already.
Hey there, Cthulhu, down there in your sunken city. You're a billion light years distant, and the stars look very pretty from relay. So close and yet so far away. E-A-E-A. Cthulhu Fatagan, or is that Cthulhu Fatine? I can never quite remember, 'cause I'm not in my right mind since I met you. No one corrupts the way you do. You know it's true. Oh, it's what you'll do to me. Oh, and all humanity. Oh, you'll rise up from the sea. Oh, kill everyone slowly, except the ones like me.